So I just want to say thank you everyone who watched and shared. The video did way better than I thought. The posts on Twitter did way better than I thought. And honestly, it was all love. It's so much love and just thank you for that. That's really cool. So what I wanted to do was just answer some questions. I sent out a YouTube community post, and that also got a lot more comments than I think I've ever seen on a YouTube community post. So that's cool. I'm going to answer a few of them that I believe kind of cover pretty much all of them. You know, after a certain amount of time, there's sort of repeated questions and stuff. So hopefully answering these questions will sort of answer a large majority of them. And I'm sorry if I didn't answer your question, you know, it is what it is. And then to preface as well, just because this is the nature of what it is, because of things I've signed, if some questions I can't answer or don't answer, maybe that's why, because I've signed something that says I can't talk about it. One final thing, the video won't have a lot of editing because I don't have a lot of time, so it's more or less just going to be something to listen to. So Mason Parkinson asks, how did it feel making all the stuff knowing it was for Sonic Movie 3? And how did it feel getting contacted by them to create this stuff for the movie? So obviously it feels pretty amazing. It's not something that I think I can even express. Like, it's almost like an out-of-body experience a bit. But I think I mentioned this in the video potentially, or a comment somewhere, where it kind of feels like someone put a whole movie in front of an animation I worked on. You know, like it feels like separate stuff. It feels like two separate like projects. I mean, getting contacted by them, that's, you know, it's just crazy. Anxiety and excitement, you know, it's not something that you can express. It's just something that hopefully everyone gets to feel something like it someday, because it's crazy. Livy Komori asks, is Classic Shadow technically canon now? I'm going to go ahead and say no. I think I mentioned in the video that it feels like I snuck them in, and I still kind of believe that's the case. Like, where I think Sega's aware, I don't think they would count this as a Classic Shadow. I really think they would just think like, oh, it's a low poly shadow in that art style, but they would never say like, oh damn, here's our Classic Shadow, we've never done it before, but here you go. Like, that is not, I don't think they would think that. I could think that, but I don't think they will. So Toei Sonic 61 says, I have a few. Were there any Easter eggs or hidden details in the animation that fans should look out for? There wasn't too, like, I mentioned some in the video where it was like the idle animations, the running animations, like Sonic's stopping animation was his stopping animation. In the Jelly Roll music video, I have Sonic kind of hitting the pose at the end of his dance. But honestly, I kind of wish I tried to cram a whole lot more in, but I did talk about that a bit more in the video. Were there any specific moments in the film that influenced your choice for the credits? So I need to maybe preface that, like, when I got on the project, all the storyboards had already been done with what they were planning to do by Picturemill and the team that had already been working on it. And I was just character animator and modeler. So I didn't have too much control beyond that. All of what they picked for shots to do in the movie was already planned by them. Am I a fan of Sonic? If so, do you have a favorite Sonic game or character? My favorite Sonic game, probably Sonic Heroes. When I think back at what was like the most exciting, cool Sonic thing to me as a kid, was Sonic Heroes. Like when Knuckles like makes the characters like his punching gloves and all that. I remember just going crazy. The fact that you could switch up like who leads the team, and it gives you different like abilities and different access to different environments. I just thought that was so cool. So that's one. I think it was like the first Sonic game I rented, and so that would have been probably mine. Favorite character? Knuckles from the movies. I love Knuckles from the movies. It's the best version of Knuckles, and it's probably just my favorite character in all of Sonic franchise, which is like crazy. But yeah, no, that would be mine. Sonic OMW asks, when working on your animations, did you have a storyboard or something similar to work off of, or were directions given in another way? Also, were there instructions distinct, clear, or did they leave room for personal interpretation? So with this, yeah, I mentioned before they had storyboards. The storyboards were essentially these like, it was shots in Maya where they just kind of had like what they had already for like the base characters before the edits, just like T-posing or in like a running pose, and they would just like slide them around the shots. Or for like the chows, they had like 2D chows animating in like a 3D space. So that was sort of how I was presented these things. For any element where it was like, hey, we need to maybe experiment or figure something out, that was like more or less up to me. So when the Sonic characters were running into the crab, it was like, can they be doing something before the crab? So I was like, what if they like bump each other? And then we kind of animated them like bumping back and forth. So that was kind of how the creative decisions worked. It was mostly planned out, and then any room for interpretation I was usually allowed to do, and it was very rare that they like poo-pooed anything. At Chaotic Sonic Science asked, were there any scrap scenes or characters for the end credits? As far as I know, no. But like I said, I wasn't on before the storyboarding process. Like I wasn't prior to any of that. So it's possible that they went through and had ideas and scrapped things that they didn't want. I have a feeling that they probably wanted to throw some stuff from like Tom in, but I think they just didn't want to make the model, or whatever 3D artists they were going to get in. If it wasn't me, they didn't want to pitch to them, hey, we need you to edit these Sonic models and create this Tom model. I think the only reason something like Agent Stone got in, and then later Jelly Roll and David Guetta, is because as the project was going on, they realized that I could make these, so then they could just throw those in. So for stuff like Tom, it probably was maybe thought of, but they just didn't go ahead with it. It's also possible that they didn't want to touch the actor's likeness stuff. There's probably contracts that like, if you use this actor's likeness for this thing, you have to pay them more royalties or something, or blah, 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 or okay it with them. So maybe they just didn't want to touch all that. At Jedit65, any unused animations you really wanted to use, but they wouldn't let you? I mentioned in the video, I think, when Sonic jumps, he turns into a ball. I really wanted to put that in when they jump off of that spaceship, where they both jump into their balls just like the games, but they said no. They said that Sonic doesn't do that in the movie. So when you see the movie and he does it, that made me go, oh, come on, guys. But yeah, so that was like the main one that I was wanting to get in. Will you make any small animations with the models? No, I don't own these models, and I don't honestly want to touch them after this stuff, just because of fear of copyright and stuff. What I've signed is like, hey, you don't own these. However, I wouldn't mind making like Sonic R fan models that like run around, or something like that. Just nothing to do with these at all. At Pancake Stack asks, how was working with SEGA/Paramount? Honestly, really good. There was like barely any problems. So with this, I think it might be surprising. Paramount, I believe, was a little bit more picky than SEGA was. I think SEGA was just like, yeah, go ahead, we trust you guys. But Paramount was a little bit more like, if there's any little things that need to be adjusted, it was usually from Paramount. So I think like Sonic's eye colors was Paramount. Sonic's arms was Paramount. Yeah, so I believe, so yeah, surprisingly not bad. At the Epoch Nerd asks, will you mod Sonic the Fighters to have these models in the game? Like I said before, no, I can't do anything with these characters. But if someone wants to make characters inspired by these, please with some obvious alterations, so no one says, did you give these models to people? And mod it, and that'd be cool. At Harbor Missing asks, silly question, but why aren't Sonic's eyes divided? Yeah, so early on, that was like one of the first things was like, when we're adjusting Sonic, it's like they wanted the arms, sure, but they were like, we don't know if we want the eyes to be 2 eyes or 1 eye. And I think I talked a little bit in the video about that, but yeah, I was surprised too that they were okay with the 1 eye. I don't know, yeah, sometimes they were kind of on like how something should look. Like the chows needed more specifics, but like for Sonic, you would think, yes, the movie Sonic or whatever, they want to do this. Strangely, it didn't even get to the point where I had to make tests. Like I never even made a test model of what two eyes looks like with one eye. So like that tells you there that just early on they were like, nah, just keep the original. At Brick Play Arcade YouTube asks, how did you feel animating the scene? And were you able to make more? Which one would you choose? So I'll just answer this question more or less as if I had to make more, like another different shots or something, what would I do? And what I would do, I think some fun shots would have been to actually animate the Super Sonic and Super Shadow fighting. So, you know, when they're like zipping around the planet or something, I think that would have been really cool. It maybe would have been strange. Like, I think the flow of the credits works nice where, you know, they're together and then they float and fly away and they attack Eggman. But if there was a segment where you have to like reanimate the battle, that might be weird. But I think it still would have been really cool to animate, and I would have liked to do that. Just more Super Sonic and Super Shadow, I think, would have been fun. At Cappy Jr. asks, what was your favorite character to model animate for Sonic 3 / the Run It music video? So the best, like my favorite one to animate was Sonic. It was so cool. It was just so cool seeing him run around when they actually put him in the shots after I made my running animation and then he's in the shots. And to see him move kind of like the games and stuff, like I myself was like, that's awesome. That looks really cool. So I think, you know, Sonic and all the Sonic stuff, throwing in references where I could, because that was a majority of where I could get the references. Yeah, for like a least favorite, it actually probably would have been Shadow a bit, just because making the skating animations was actually annoying to do. I don't know if you ever tried to animate skating before. It's a little bit more annoying, but yeah, I didn't hate animating like anyone, except for maybe like David Guetta and Jelly Roll. At Guru Laghima 6518 asks, can you show us your Sonic OC? I promise I won't steal. No, because you will steal it. At Crystal26T asks, what was your favorite part of working in the industry from a production cycle? So my favorite part actually is probably like after it's all done. And what I mean by that is I love, so when it's after it's done, it's done, like there's no more work to be made. And from that, I can really take a retrospective look on the project. And that's where I think it feels best. So I can think about like what I liked, what I didn't like, what I think I did poorly on. I can actually stop and think about what I've done and what I've made or what I've worked on. When you start the project, you know, you have post-process where it's exciting, you get to plan, you get to create. And that's definitely the funnest part, where you just get to think about it. But it also comes with the premise of, well, I'm imagining this thing that excites me, but I actually don't know if I can make it, so now I have anxiety. So in that sense, post-production can be a little tough, and but it's definitely the funnest. And then as the project goes into like the actual production where you're making it, usually, you know, bad habits or things that you did in the beginning just to speed things along will quickly show that it leads to issues later, or stuff gets annoying and things can't be changed as easily, and whatever. So when the project's over and you get to retrospectively look back, like it's done, you can see, you know, what you didn't like and what you liked and whatnot. And it also just gives you time. Like if you never do a retrospective on something, if you never think about it, it will just kind of move along in your head. But if you think about it, do a retrospect on it, it kind of solidifies as like a part of your life that was like important or big or meaningful, because you can find the meaning in what you did, or you can remember that these things made you happy or these things made you sad. You might just forget about it if you just move on. So I really like the after the fact stuff. At Eddie134 asks, are there any other industry norms or things you found interesting you would be able to share with us? So one thing that kind of goes along with like comedy in a group setting like this is there is this design that I have been a part of twice at 2 different studios, and it's this chicken/bird design. The big eyes sticking out the side of its head. Like I said, old people love dancing. Pretty much everyone like loves this design. And I'm kind of at the point where I'm like, I've seen that before. I don't really find it funny anymore. Obviously it's funny, but it bugs me because it happened like twice. Like the first time it's like, this is a funny design. And I'm like, sure. And then the next place I worked at, someone just organically got to that point. It's like, this is the best design. So this is actually peak design. Sorry to say, everyone, this is as best as it's going to get. At Glowinster says, so probably not because I wouldn't want to work on it. Of course, I'd want to work on these, but there's just not a lot of these. So that leads me to this other question. Is like, what other media would get this sort of treatment? Pretty much anything that has like a classic retro video game, right? But like things that exist right now, you have Mario, maybe, you know, with like a Mario 64 type animation. You know, does Castlevania want to do that? Does like, you know, I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, I'd love to work on more of these, but does the industry have that work? Not really, I don't think. And there's a lot more talented low poly artists that I think probably should be working on these projects more than me. At Dereal Dead Guy says, how do you feel working on the #1 movie in America? Honestly, it's weird. It doesn't feel real. Like, even if I never made this video, these posts where people were aware, my life wouldn't feel any different. The fact that I went out of my way to be like, hey, I worked on this, and to then just be showered by love and questions and whatever, it's like, now this feels more like I've worked on a big thing and I can think about it and be more proud of myself in a way, maybe because now that people know, it's weird, but yeah, my life was just carrying on. I wasn't getting more opportunities because of it necessarily. Like it's strange. And what's really strange too is it was such a small team that worked on it. It was like, you know, Picturemill was only 6 whatever people for this project, and to be such a small group of people that worked on a very large thing, and to have like a chunk of the film be like just a thing that only a small group of people worked on, it was just fascinating, because it's like, I did a big thing, but I'm still here in my room. My life hasn't really changed. So it's just weird. It's weird to think about. At Project Alpha 22VA asks, technical question, where did these models end up accuracy wise? If you had to guess, it's one thing to make the model that fits the aesthetic, it's another to try to stay console accurate to a specific era. And well, knowing Sonic fans, I'm sure that thought was on your mind. If I was to put this model into a Saturn or Dreamcast or Naomi cabinet, wherever you were aiming for, how much of this you think would work as intended, and where do you think you skirt the rules a bit? Yeah, so this is a really interesting question where it's like, essentially, you know, how accurate is this? And I think pretty accurate. The knees and the elbows have more topology than I think normal. I would say the hands have more topology than normal, but the Fighter Arcade did have, you know, these are the hands. So I feel like they'd be pretty good. There's a couple areas with like shadow where there's unnecessary polygons to make like the reds highlights on his hair. Maybe the Robotniks could maybe be too high with the heads, but I don't know. I think these all actually fit pretty well. There wasn't anything that me personally, I was like, whew, that's not gonna fly. Besides maybe the hands, if you wanted to put it on like a console, the hands would probably be the biggest issue. At Anime Otaku 85 Junior asks, what was the hardest thing that you had to do in your animations? Just referring to the Sonic movie, the hardest thing was animating dances. I actually have never really animated dances before. I think I did like some simple ones in like a game I worked on or something, but nothing to this level, and especially not like an entire dance sequence like the music video wanted. So that was definitely hard to do. You know, anytime if you look at like a body dancing, there's a lot of movement going on. There's a lot of weird movement going on as well, and especially with your legs are always like holding balance in some way. You know, so I think people will often maybe think like a fight scene's harder to animate than a dance sequence, but honestly, I would definitely say a dance sequence is harder to animate than something like a fight scene or whatnot. So it's probably dancing. At Luigi Collector asks, who's your favorite character to make for the Sonic 3 movie? Please put me in. I'm a huge fan. I got you, buddy. Favorite character to make for the Sonic movie? I mean, I think the ones that turned out the coolest are the Robotniks, because they're just, in my opinion, a really fun, cool design. I think also the Super Sonic and Super Shadow were cool, even though those are like fairly simple designs. But yeah, I would say the Robotniks. At 0 YouTube 1527 asks, what screenshots did you get from Paramount when you were working on the credits? If you can show them at least. So I can't show them, obviously, but I think I mentioned in the video, the only ones I really got that were like, oh, was the Robotniks outfits and Sonic and Shadow's motorcycle stuff and him holding his gun. But that was really it, because most of it was pretty self-explanatory, right? Like, hey, we need the characters running, we need them stopping, we need them idling, we need them looking around, we need Shadow punching out of a glass tube. We saw that in the trailer already. So really, it was only the one that was like, whoa, was the Robotniks outfits that I got to see before everyone else, and the gun. Granodos07 asks, if you were to return for the credits for Sonic 4, what style would you choose? Adventure models, rush models, Sonic R Advanced, blah, blah, blah. For Sonic 4, okay, so we'll say if I was to return, it'd probably be low poly or pixel art. This is what I can do. I would not, if they said let's do heroes, I'd be like, yeah, let's do heroes, because, and that's basically Sonic Adventure, right? So I would absolutely try my best to do that. So that's probably the one I would choose. If just as a fan, what I would personally like to see, if it wasn't me involved, the Sonic OVA with Metal Sonic. If they could do something like that again, that would be sick. That would be my favorite thing. I would love that. At Sonic and Tails, Buddy Pals asks, did you work on the movie too? So this is something that I wanted to kind of talk about. So around the middle of the making of the credits, they mentioned, people from Paramount working on the movie mentioned, they asked if they could have the models, because there was going to be a sequence in the film that Tails is using a computer to show some sort of heist, and they were thinking of putting the models in there. So when the movie comes around, I'm watching it in theaters, we get to the sequence that would be, I was like, holy shit, the models might be in the movie. And then they weren't at all. It was just wireframes of the film's models. And I was pretty bummed. Not super bummed in the sense of, oh no, I'm not in the movie, my stuff I worked on is not in the movie. More bummed because I think it would have been really cool to see low poly models in that sense. Just, I think it would have been awesome to see the fighter models being the fans. Like, I think fans of Sonic would have been really excited about that. So that's more of what I'm disappointed in. But that was something that, you know, is too bad in my opinion, because that was a great idea they had and they didn't do it. I think it was due to time. Like, this was, you know, 2 months before the movie came out, right? So it's just a lot of work they'd have to redo. At Prepping Sleep 65 asks, how did the producers manage to make the concept for the animation without spoiling you? Yeah, I mean, it was pretty straightforward in a way, but I was obviously spoiled on some stuff, like, you know, the Chow's kind of being there, Super Sonic, Super Shadow, and whatnot. You know, it would have been insane if they had me, like, animate, like, a Metal Sonic or something, right? Like, to maybe tease that end credit scene. But there was, like, nothing truly that was, like, you know, something that you couldn't think would happen. You know, big Robotnik ship in space. I'm thinking, yeah, I mean, this will probably happen in the movie if it's based off Sonic Adventure. So it wasn't, you know, the biggest challenge, I don't think. Also, I mean, if I got spoiled for the movie, like, care, I'm working on the movie. That's super cool. At David Garcia 6995 asks, how far in advance before the release of the movie were you contacted by the studio? Were there any strict deadlines? So I think I mentioned it was around the end of August, which is only, you know, we started in September. So that's only like 3 or 4 months before the movie, which I think might surprise people that the credits were made so late into the project. Like, it had already been announced to be released and they still hadn't made the credits yet. So if stuff went really wrong, that would have been a really big problem. But, you know, that's about how far in advance it was. Were there any strict deadlines? No, actually. It never, like, obviously there was that looming kind of deadline, but it never felt that bad. I think I'm pretty good at managing my time with these kind of projects. So I personally was never under, like, too much pressure. Like, I still had weekends off. I did my 8-9 hours a day. I didn't feel like I had to do too much more. So it wasn't too bad. At Ocean Plus asks, question, do you even like the Sonic movies or just one? Also, what's your favorite character in Sonic or any franchise? Thank you. So do I like the Sonic movies? Okay, bit of a hot take here. I like them. I don't love them. I do think there's room potentially for improvement there. And I think most people who watch these could be like, yeah, it could push it even further and be a little better. There's still more potential. But that's what I do admire about the movies, is every film as it goes on, they keep realizing the potential more and more. So like if we look at Sonic 1, it's a fine enough kids movie. Like it's not amazing. And then 2 I think was a lot better and pushed it in the ways we wanted. And then 3 I think is a lot better and is pushing it in the ways we want. So you know, I think the movies are good. Not amazing movies, but I'm still like excited for the future. Were the credits designed around / made to sync up with Run It? Did the song come first and then the animation followed suit? So the song had already kind of been there as I got there. They had already picked the song and they're kind of moving forward with it. I think an aspect that is kind of sad, but we've seen this in the other Sonic movies, is these guys don't go, hey, what are the, like Paramount doesn't go, hey, what's something the fans will really love? They'll more or less go with who's really popular right now, who can we get to make a song for the movie? So it sadly it's more that. So country's really popular right now, and that's why. For like syncing up to the music though, I think honestly you could probably swap it like any song. Like if you put Live and Learn at the end of it, it'd probably work great. So I don't think the syncing up was too important. I think some areas it kind of just worked pretty well. At Harry Dunn 8447 asks, if SEGA approached you to work on a game using your art style, what would you want in it? Story, gameplay, locations, whatever. So I think for this, if it was like, hey, we want someone doing your art style, I really wouldn't hate just the idea of like a remake, remaster of Sonic Fighters, and there's low poly skins that you can put on everything, and I would just be a part of the skins. I think that would be cool. That would work here. Same with like Sonic R, or you know, something like that. Or Sonic Extreme. Yeah, try that. But for like an actual idea of like I would say like a really cool new Sonic game, this would be my pitch. Sonic somehow gets trapped in some kind of digital world thing, and the levels that you'd go through are different eras art styles. So you have one level that's using the adventure sprites, you have one level that's using the fighters models, whatever, you have one that's using R models, you have one that's using the adventure models and Sonic 06 models and the generations. I would kind of have it be like that, and really to celebrate the franchise, much like Generations did, but really just do this like using these old art styles, because I think all of these old Sonic art styles are super iconic. I think, you know, like I always think about the Sonic Game Boy Advance sprites. Those sprites look awesome. Like if you could have that, and then maybe the background's like low poly, like fighters or something. Like I don't know. I think it'd be cool. That would be my pitch there. At Rider Boy Color 9 asks, did you make the shadow model, or is it just a recolor from the Sonic? Same with the Super Shadow. They're just recolors, really, edits and recolors. If you have to remake something that's so similar, you're kind of just not using the time wisely for this kind of project. At Giga Presley asks, did you ever suggest the idea of using Sonic Adventure models? I thought that would fit better than the Fighters models. So I think at a point, like a lot of us would kind of like mention it, but really this decision was already made before I got on the project, and I think it just would have taken longer to use the adventure models. You know, they have more bones and whatever, and they got like mouth movement and stuff that you potentially want to bring in. So and then the environment might have to be a bit more higher poly, maybe. I don't know, it's hard to say, but really it was just more of a timing situation, I think. I mean, this stuff was done like only 3 months before the release of the film, so if it had to take longer, it could have been harder. And even then, like the low poly stuff I made, these fighter models were simple enough that I could do most of the work myself. And if you had adventure models, maybe I couldn't do it myself, and you have to bring on more people. And I personally feel like for the film, they probably should have done the adventure models. It's weird they didn't. They must have discussed it, I'm sure. I should have asked. I'm sorry, I didn't ask when I was there. At T Kelly Behan asks, I have a question. Was it Paramount's idea to have the classic Sonic shadow characters of the eye color like the modern versions of the characters? Yeah. So it was, I believe. It around like 1/3 in, after the first kind of round of animations and stuff, and I had shadow made up. I think someone was like, they noticed, they like randomly noticed, they're like, oh, they don't have their eye colors like in the movie. Can we slap that on? so then I had to like go back and add those. But yeah, it was just kind of like, we're moving along, it's okay. They had their eye colors, and then just randomly, I think someone kind of noticed or realized that they wanted that in. It's really interesting to see what they like pick and choose to have represent the movie versus the games. Like I've mentioned the fact that they had the opportunity to do two eyes, but they stuck with the one eye, and that never seemed like an issue. But then you have the eye colors, and they're like, whoa, we gotta change the eye color. At Showtime, Art Z asks, what's your favorite upcoming or already out video game movie? So I might cheat a little bit here, but I'm gonna say like the first Castlevania series with Trevor Belmont stuff, I think is like my favorite video game. I'm gonna say show, but more of like adaptation in the film space, because I think they did such a great job at bringing like a nothing storyline and pulling it up to, a show, a really, really long film. But then if I'm not cheating, if I had to pick a video game movie that I really like, honestly, I'm not sure. I think as a kid, I really liked the Prince of Persia movie, but as an adult, I know it's not very good. So yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think any video game movie has still yet crossed that, like, this is undeniably, like, truly a great film. But the closest ones are probably Sonic movies. Pingulio asks, did you have full liberty on the animations, or were there some guidelines installed beforehand? So I think this might be surprising. I never got like guidelines. I think, you might hear about something like someone working on a Mickey Mouse or a Mario thing, and maybe they give them like a big PDF file that's like, this is what you can and can't do. You can't do these poses. They have to be these poses. Everything has to be this or whatever. So I was potentially expecting that, you're animating Sonic, but no, I got nothing. I think what was good about me working on it was I tended to try to keep towards like the legacy and keep it looking like it is, like the games and stuff. I understand the respect that needs to be put on that. So I think maybe that's why I never had to be given that, or maybe they just didn't have the time to send me one. I'm not sure. At Sonic Animations 440 asks, what was your favorite part making this? I think I talked a little bit about it earlier, but my favorite part was that first kind of animation test where I animated Sonic and Shadow running, and they were running on the spaceship. That was the first one we did, just to see if it could be done and how it would look and whatnot. And it looked really cool, and it looked like the actual video game animation. So that was probably my favorite part of making this, because when that hit, it was like, okay, yeah, we can do this. It looks awesome. At Nerd Critic Boy asks, did you get to meet any one of the cast like Ben Schwartz or Keanu Reeves? No, I was so far down the chain that I didn't get to talk or meet or send a message or anything with them. However, it was kind of funny, like when the people working on this, like the leads would talk about these people, they would always like use their first names. So if we're talking about Jim Carrey, they'd be like, oh, well, we'll maybe, ask Jim's people what they think of it. You're like, oh, Jim's people, like probably someone they work with. And then you realize, oh no, they're referring to like Jim Carrey. Because some of these people, have actually been in contact and worked with these actors and stuff. So it's just kind of funny to have that sort of kind of dialogue around it, whatnot, like just referring to, instead of Ben Schwartz, it'd just be like Ben, or it'd just be like Keanu, it's like colleagues. Although I did get a video of reference from Jim Carrey, but it wasn't used. It was like just to help with like a kicking thing. Guy with a Chair asks, what are your thoughts on Sonic the Fighters, considering the models seem to be based off the game, right? Yes, actually, I saw a lot of people saying like, oh, the Sonic R models, the Sonic Fighter models. But yeah, I thought the game was so cool. As a kid, I always was like, why doesn't Sonic ever like punch or kick? So then when I saw the game, it was like there he is punching and kicking in like a fighting game. So I love the game. I think it's super cool. Leg Rush 9039 asks, on scale of 1 to 10, how hilarious are the characters dancing? Well, that's an 11. That's an 11 right there. 11 for dancing? You kidding me? At Docs the Fox asks, were you going to make a model for Maria? Me and 16-Bit joked about this when we were talking about potential for like the scenes that were going to have to be made, and we thought, wouldn't it be hilarious if that was a sequence we had to animate? But no, there was never a discussion on that. At Maverick Indigo asks, have you run into any weird design notes? This project wasn't too bad, but there is one. And I'm probably not supposed to show you it, but this was the note I got for the Chow's model. I understand, yes, fixed it, whatever, but that was a weird one to me. At Ben Integral 6121 asks, if you could choose to work on another franchise to do similar work for, which one would you choose first? I think the Mario one obviously is like the only other good example of like a movie that could maybe use my skill set. Yeah, like doing Mario 64 animation, like that would be awesome. I love it. But here's the thing, Illumination has some extremely talented animators. It's a full animated film. They would just get those guys. They grab them all online and then they just get those guys to animate it. So I would not be part of it, but it would be cool to be. And then I have a final question from Roarplays RBLX. They asked, will you continue these great kinds of work? If so, will be Sonic related. Anyway, awesome stuff, man. Thank you everyone. Thank you everyone so much. But so I wanted to just say, like, I know I attracted a lot of Sonic fans and Sonic people, but I probably won't be making Sonic content going forward too much. Maybe every once in a while, but just kind of general video game stuff is what I kind of hope to talk about. But if people are here kind of hoping for more Sonic stuff, I'm probably not going to push into that much further. This I kind of hope to be more the endish. Yeah, so just, oh my gosh, thanks everyone so much. The response has been unbelievable. It's so much more than I thought, and I can't thank everyone enough. Yeah, just thank you.